Hi folks, Why Guy here again. This is my third video of a series of videos I'm going to do that's called The Why Guy Asks, What is Hell? On my last video I brought out, I finished that video bringing out that true Orthodox Judaism never did believe in such a place. Never taught it, wasn't part of their culture, and what have you. Now, there's going to be those who disagree with that, and in defense of that disagreement, I understand. Let me explain. By history, historically, the Jewish people were taken in captivity by all sorts of pagan societies. And these pagan societies, it's natural if you're captive of that, you, your family, and generationally, oftentimes, you would end up adopting or adapting to some of the beliefs of that pagan society. And so some of that had to filter through the thinking of a Jewish mind. And that's understandable. So there might be a segment of a Jewish population who do believe in hell, but as far as Orthodox, as far as traditionally speaking, it was never taught, never believed in. So let me move on to a video that even describes it better. A 6-minute video. I challenge any and all my viewers to view this video. It's called A Jewish Woman's Journey. I discovered it on a site called HopeBeyondHell.net. Go to videos and then other videos and scroll down until you see A Jewish Woman's Journey, produced by a woman named, a beautiful woman named Michelle Amirault. She's married to another beautiful person by the name of Gary Amirault. Those two have a website called tentmaker.org. I would encourage all my viewers to go to that site for research, not just with the topic of hell, but many, many topics. Considerable amount of books they have on that site, but they teach the history, they teach language, cultural differences. It's probably the best site I've run across. If it's not, if those of you who have other sites that also address these things, by no means am I saying that your site isn't as valid as Gary and Michelle's, but I just haven't run across yours yet. So anyway, I want to encourage my viewers to shout out to tentmaker.org. Wonderful site, wonderful people. Also, I read the book Hope Beyond Hell, which you can get a free download of that on the hopebeyondhell.net site. That gives you an awful lot of research materials to tantalize you and to cause you to question some things. It sure did me. One of the better books I've come across was written actually by a friend of ours. It's this one here. If you can see that on the video, it's called Raising Hell. Okay, written by Julie Ferrarda. A shout out to Julie, her husband Steve. Wonderful people, and I love them dearly. There's a lot of things in her book that is put to a great way of looking at it, and I don't want to go too deep in that. I want to encourage anyone to read that. Well, after viewing Michelle's video is what took me over the top, which made me realize that, you know, I'm missing something here. I'm missing something in this this belief that I'm believing in. Something is off. Something is wrong. And that seed of doubt was planted in me before that. But as far as taking me over the top, it was Michelle's video. Please view it. 6-minute video. Well, the question came to my mind. I had to ask myself, when was hell created? Well, creation is in the Bible. So I opened my Bible and I found the creation of man and woman and the earth and the bugs and the flowers and all crawling things and trees and the sun, the moon, the stars, the heavens, the oceans, the fish. I mean, you name it, animals, critters of every kind, size, shape, and model. And a place called the Garden of Eden, and even sin, according to some beliefs, was created in that garden. And so the creation of just about everything was covered in the Bible, except hell's never mentioned. And right there, folks, that's a huge red flag that it's got to be a consideration. In the garden, if sin was created there, and the result of this sin, this created sin by these created people, the result of that sin was going to be this place called hell, don't you think it would be mentioned somewhere, anywhere, that God created it? And yet I found no reference whatsoever to any creation of hell. anywhere in my Bible. So then I had to ask the question, well, who created it then? If God didn't create it, somebody must have. What's the origins of hell? I began to investigate the history of hell, and it was difficult because every culture believed in an afterlife, but not every culture believed in their version of a place called hell. And so I went back to the earliest writings that you could come on clay tablets, 4,000, 6,000 BC clay tablets of Mesopotamian and Babylonian, ancient Babylonian Empire. And they had a place called hell that they called it Cernugia. That was their name they gave it. And even their place was still considered a journey for the most part, and you could get your way out of there. If you followed the few steps that actually quite a few steps that they mentioned. Well, I want to encourage people that even though you can't pinpoint it down to a person or a specific culture, the important aspect of the whole research still concluded that all cultures believed in this place except for one, the very culture that Christ came from. So that's another one of those red flags. Well, I'm going to share two analogies to better express what I'm getting at. Two analogies. The first one is if I took a small child and introduced the small child to a campfire, let's say, and the child was at the age that understood what I was talking about, English, old enough child to understand. If I were to say, do not, Munchkin, do not put your hand in that fire. And do you know why? Because it's very, very, very cold. That kid would look at me like I was crazy, like I was nuts. And they would say, no, it's hot. And I go, yes, it's hot, but it's also cold. I've just added further confusion. Now, put that analogy on the shelf for a moment, and let me use another analogy, a marriage analogy. Not just a marriage, but a horrible marriage. The worst kind of marriage you can imagine, the kind of marriage where one spouse abuses the other spouse horribly, both verbal abuse, mental abuse, physical abuse. And not only does that spouse abuse that other one, they abuse their children in the same way. And then it's been known that children that are raised in that kind of abuse will oftentimes marry someone and do the abuse to their spouse, and then not only to their spouse but to their children, and then their children get raised and get married, and it just goes on sometimes for generation to generation until somebody puts a stop to it, till a paradigm shift takes place, counseling takes place. A lot of excess baggage has been looked at and healed. Well, folks, I want to tell you about a marriage that took place with mankind that far outweighs any marriage abuse that I just mentioned. And it's taking I'm going to marry two things. I'm going to marry a culture with a mistranslated word. And you take a culture, a paganistic culture, a belief system in hell. Just take the word hell, for example. Marry that word, okay, to another word called eternity, or eternal, or everlasting. Thus, it produces eternal hell, hell evermore, hell everlasting, whatever, and the abuse that causes. And yet, the word eternity is such a mistranslated word. In the Greek, the word eternal, eternity, and everlasting, it doesn't even exist in the Greek. It doesn't exist. The word is aeon or aeonian. Okay? And if you look in your Strong's Concordance, folks, you'll see a number 165 or 166 that it describes my analogy of hot and cold. It says a segment of time, describing eternity, describing aeon or aeonus, a segment of time. Now, wait a minute, a segment? A period of time? Future or past? It describes it as the beginning of the world. Just the word beginning is a segment of time. A messianic period of time, either future or past. And then within the same definition and within the same sentence, it says eternity. time without end, everlasting, forever and ever. And folks, that's hot and cold. You can't have both. You cannot take a word and say it means hot and it means cold. And that's exactly what they did in the Strong's, and they've done it to a few other words too. And there's a reason behind that. It's called the lens in which the Strong's was published. I would like to point that out in future videos, which I believe I will. But folks, hell is a millstone. Hell, the belief in hell is a millstone around your religious neck. It's going to pull you down. And some of you will say, well, no, it's not pulling me down. Folks, it's an anchor. It's an anchor to paganism. The smallest amount of research will tell you that's exactly what it is. Now, some of you viewers will view this and go, no, all is well with me because I'm saved. And at this point in time in your life, your relationship with God couldn't be more beautiful. Some of you want to just put hell in the back of your mind, but you know what, folks? It's back there. It's going to eat at you. It may not be right in the forefront of your mind right now, but it's just a matter of time, okay, before it rears its ugly head and it comes along and slaps you right in the face. And that time is going to be when somebody you love dearly, that does not believe in the way you believe, that keeps them out of this place called hell. And they die. And your heart breaks. Because not only are they dead to you now in this lifetime, your belief that abuse, I was talking about, that horrible marriage, is now going to say that forever and ever, for all eternity. And not just all eternity, but suffering too, consciously suffering. Folks, how's that going to work for you? How does that work for you? How does that portray God? Well, folks, just like God wanted and delivered the Jewish people from these Babylonian cultures and the influence that these cultures had on them because they were slandering his very character and adding so many impurities to something that is so pure and wonderful as himself. Folks, he wants to deliver all of us from the bondage that this paganistic belief has brought into our lives. And again, you may not feel it right now, but you will. It's just a matter of time unless it's addressed. Unless it's addressed. Okay, well, in my next video, I'm going to talk about how it was introduced into the Christian religion, specifically. And we'll go from there. And thank you for viewing this video. And I hope I planted a seed of doubt again that will cause you to research some of this stuff on your own. Thank you. Signing off.